Welcome back. So in the last video I spoke about the primary movements I use in order to teach my body and tell my body that it's time for me to go to sleep. And it all started from a change of mindset, and that is that for me, and probably for you, being tired isn't interpreted by my body as a signal to fall asleep. So I've had to teach my body other signals which it interprets as time to fall asleep, and I refer to these as the 3 primary movements. What we'll see later is that those are the signals to fall asleep, but that we need secondary movements to relax the body to allow it to actually go to sleep. So briefly, let's recap on the primary movements. So let's say you're looking for a 15-minute period in which you're going to fall asleep. We break that down into 3 periods of 5 minutes. So for the first 5 minutes, I'd lie on my back with my hands above my head, not moving other than that, staying very still and relaxed. Then I'd move my hands down by my side and repeat the process for another 5 minutes. Once again, not moving or fidgeting around. Personally for me, I don't use a pillow when I'm lying on my back. I think that's the most comfortable. And then finally I roll over onto my left side. Personally for me, being on my right side has my body going feeling very numb. Obviously it's restricting the flow of blood. So you roll onto your side and you bring your knees up kind of like in the fetal position, but in a comfortable way, and thereafter I put a pillow between my legs, between my arms and my hands. I kind of hug that one, and then one underneath my head. I really recommend embracing multiple pillows if you're the sort of person for whom going to sleep is a bit of an effort. So thereafter, basically, you stay still, you continue with your secondary movements, and the next thing you know, you've woken up after a couple of hours of lovely sleep. So, what are the secondary movements? Let's get going. For me, there are 5 secondary movements, and to be honest, I don't do all of them all of the time. Some I prefer doing and whatnot, but we'll talk about all of them now. The first thing is food before bed. And when I say food, I'm talking about fatty foods like a teaspoon of almond butter or peanut butter. Something like that, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour before bed is great. I don't understand the physiology behind it, but I understand that that is a very good thing for helping you to fall asleep. So, to be honest, I'm not great with this one. I might do it 2 or 3 times a week. And a lot of the time I have more than 1 teaspoon because I do love almond butter. The next secondary movement is to read. And this one is very important. And though I can be lazy sometimes, for somebody who is trying to teach the body how to sleep, I'd strongly recommend this one. Really would. I'd ask you to be very diligent with this one. So what you're looking for here is a minimum of 10 minutes. I literally would set an alarm clock, say, you know what, it's late, I'm really tired, I want to get to sleep, I need to be up early in the morning. Nonetheless, I need to read. Set a 10-minute alarm clock on, let's say, your phone or whatever, and take the time to do the reading because it pays off. It allows you to get to sleep quicker. Under no circumstances are you to read something which is work related, because what we're trying to do here is switch off. And if it's work or something important like that, well then you're not going to switch off. Your brain is still going to be active. And you shouldn't do something that's electronic, like a phone, a PC or tablet, because they tend to keep your brain and your body awake. So what I recommend is fiction. It doesn't have to be fiction, but I strongly recommend fiction because it allows you thereafter to go into kind of a fantasy land, start daydreaming, and eventually start dreaming in your sleep. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Something which I do every night without fail, however, is the breathing routine. So the reading routine is used to turn off your brain, but the breathing routine is used to relax your body. And I'm telling you, you cannot fall asleep if you are tense and unrelaxed. Now, I'll talk about the specifics of it later, but these are done during the first and secondary primary movements, basically when I'm lying on my back. And depending on how motivated I am, I'll incorporate with the breathing routine a brief body relaxation routine. And to be honest, when I say routine, I'm talking 30 seconds to maybe 60 seconds worth. Something very simple. And these certainly the breathing is something I do absolutely every night. And in reality, the body relaxation, I do that most times. I do it maybe 5 times out of 7 in a week. And finally, I start to fantasize. I start to engage my brain. I start to engage the daydreaming part of my brain, and that allows me to switch off the day's events and maybe the following day's events. It allows me to blur the line between reality and dreams. I'll speak more about that in a moment. So what I'm saying here is this. We have our primary movements, which are on our back for 5 minutes with our hands up, on our back for 5 minutes with our hands down, and then onto the side. We have those that tell the body to sleep. And we have the secondary movements to help it to get to sleep. We take some fatty foods beforehand, maybe half an hour or so. We read something which is not very engaging in an intellectual way for maybe 10 minutes beforehand. We do a mandatory breathing routine, and very often we should incorporate with that a body relaxation routine because they go hand in hand. And finally, we begin to daydream. So now I'd like to talk a bit more in detail about the specific secondary movements. In terms of reading, if you could say that if you're not a reader you could skip this step, but I still would say you should try it. And I strongly recommend you buy a book of fiction. Something like the Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings or something like that. Personally, one of the best books I had for this were the Sherlock Holmes anthology. I'd read an essay, all of them were standalone essays, and it would engage you. It genuinely would engage you for 10 minutes. Sometimes I might read for longer, but definitely it would take my mind off the day's events very rapidly. Actually, at the moment, I'm reading Born to Run. Now, Born to Run is non-fiction, but nonetheless, it isn't something that really engages me on an intellectual level, so it's great. The point here is that you start reading, let's say for 10 minutes, whatever it is, and you just can switch off and let your brain start taking in the images or picturing images from the book, and that helps you when it comes to falling asleep. The breathing routine is something that under no circumstances do I skip. Sometimes I might be extra tired. Okay, I can convince myself to put down the book, but the breathing routine is something absolutely mandatory. It takes about 2 minutes, maybe. To be honest, for me it takes even less. It takes about 70 seconds. And we do this during the first primary movement. So this is when we're lying on our back with our hands above our heads. So the first thing I'll do, having put my hands above my head, is I'll put my tongue on the roof of my mouth. Then I'll breathe in lightly for 4 seconds. And I'll hold my breath for about 7 seconds. And thereafter, I'll breathe out through my mouth rather than my nose, from the lungs, and I'll try and purposely make a noise, a breathing, an actual a sound from doing that, so that it's like I'm forcing, in a kind of a gradual way, the air from my lungs. And I'll repeat this maybe 7 times. Sometimes 5, sometimes 6, sometimes even 4, but I'll try for about 7 times. Personally, each time I complete a cycle, I'll count on my finger. What this does is it slows down your heart rate and it really relaxes you. So like I said, maybe it takes 2 minutes. So you put your tongue to the roof of your mouth, you breathe in for 4 seconds, you pause for 7, and you breathe out for 8. Breathe in, pause for 7, breathe out for 8. And I said that the body relaxation routine can be done with that. And in reality, if you've done your research, you'll probably find that meditation is the big thing for trying to fall asleep. And these two routines are, I suppose, a way of meditating. But for me, the simplest one I have is when I'm breathing in during my breathing routine, I imagine or I picture all of the stress from my day, from all the tension from my muscles coming to one point in my body. Then when I'm pausing, I'm holding it for 7 seconds, and then during the breathing out for 8 seconds, all of this tension is leaving the muscles in my body. So I try to do the two of those together. I'll breathe in. At the same time, I'll picture all of the tension being gathered together in my body. I'll hold it for 7 seconds, and I'll breathe out, making a breathing noise, and at the same time picturing all of the tension leaving my body. In reality, all of that happens during the first primary movement, when I'm on my back with my hands above my head. And then I do my favourite part of the day. I go to Fantasyland. This is really good because it is switching your brain off. It's allowing you to bridge the gap between your daydreaming, and, of course, falling asleep and sleeping. So this might seem like a bit of an odd one, but I think you should try and indulge yourself with a fantasy and live it in detail during the body relaxation routine, after the body relaxation routine. So for me, what I do is I get into my first primary movement with my hands above my head. I do my breathing routine and my relaxation routine. I wait a couple of minutes, and then I'll start fantasizing. Just think I have kind of various fantasies which I can play out, and then during that I'll put my hands down by my side, continue basically daydreaming. And when I feel I've done about maybe 10 minutes of this, or less sometimes, I'll roll onto my side and continue with the fantasy, and then eventually I'll be asleep. But the fantasy really is daydreaming. Sometimes they can be pretty outrageous, but I find actually what works really well is reliving exercise that I did during the day. I'm really picturing in great detail my exercise. So I like to run, and I'll picture my running route in great detail, actually picturing where I was, how I felt, what I saw, and so on. I found that works great. Another kind of mad fantasy I have sometimes is imagining what life would be like if I had all the money in the world, or I don't know, if I was the president of America, something along those lines. Something that is outside of what you normally can experience, and hence your brain can start daydreaming, and eventually you can start dreaming and falling asleep. So I'd like to stop there with a very quick recap, saying that I recommend fatty foods beforehand, like peanut butter or almond butter, a teaspoon of that maybe half an hour beforehand. To read fantasy or something along those lines for 10 minutes. To do a breathing routine coupled with a body relaxation routine, like, I suppose, a bit of meditation. And finally, to start daydreaming and go into Fantasyland. So, that's that. Thanks for watching. In the next video, I'll put it all together and we'll talk about some frequently asked questions. Thank you, and enjoy your day.